maintain separation of duties to ensure adequate controls. And I just want to explain, if you're in the purchasing department, we have 2 in my department, you're not allowed to write checks. If you're in accounts payable or you're in Doris's position, you're not allowed to enter purchase orders. If you are in payroll, you do not even have access to accounts payable or any of the budgets that are to do with expenses that are not related to accounts payable. And so, or to payroll. And so I wanted just to make everybody rest and be at ease that we do have separation of duties. The other thing that really came up on one of our audits and we're very serious about is entering vendors. Purchasing department can enter vendors. If you write a check or you write a check at a campus with activity fund, you are not allowed to enter a vendor. That keeps theft, hopefully, at bay. And so I just, and then as changes come over for checking accounts where we pay vendors, they can only come to the purchasing department. Accounts payable cannot go change those checking accounts. That way there's no misappropriation of funds. And it keeps theft at bay if we get a false report of saying, hey, we need to change our checking account information, then we have some standards set in place to make sure those are true checking account changes. And so I want y'all to know we are really serious about our internal controls. And I'm actually more scared of the auditors than I am of y'all. So I want us to stay 98 if we can, or at least in purchasing. And we're not perfect, and listen, we're dealing with humans that aren't perfect, but we do our very best to follow our procedures and policies that you guys have set before us. The second, I have the clicker now, let me go. So purchase requisition process. I want to speak a little bit about that. Requisitions and purchase orders allow our teams, if you will, we have many teams at each campus and department, to adequately execute their plan for their department or their campus. It also lets them provide proof of what they're spending on, and this is especially helpful when it comes time to audit. And so a teacher, for instance, or a department head will request a purchase of goods, a service, or a repair, and they give it to their administrative assistant, and I'll get into that a little bit on who has access to what, but they will give it to their campus secretary, if you will. Their principal or the administrator will either approve or deny. If there's a denial, then we make sure we write the reason of why we're denying it or why they're denying it. Maybe it needs more documentation. Maybe it doesn't meet the need of that campus improvement plan. Maybe it doesn't meet the federal programs requirement, but there's several eyes looking on it before it even gets to me. If it's, I also want, I'll explain it in when we get to the purchase order side, which is actually where we are now. So purchase order processing, and this is how a requisition becomes an official purchase order. I really didn't know this until 19 years ago when I came to work for this district, and I applied for the purchasing clerk's job, and I had never even heard of a purchase order. So basically I looked it up, and the best way I can explain it, it's a fancy IOU. It is basically a piece of paper that says, I want $740,000 worth of Chromebooks. I want you to deliver them, and I want you to be out the expense until they're on our property, we know they work, and then we'll pay you for them. But that's really what a purchase order is. It's a promise between a vendor and a customer that we want what's on here, you're going to deliver what's on here, and we're not going to pay you for it until we have it on our property. We're not allowed to prepay things. We're not allowed to pay in advance. And so I'm looking at all vendors to make sure we can accomplish those. So purchase order budgets, I'm going to talk about the purchase order groups, and I think this is important. I want y'all to know, I counted before I got here, we have 40 purchase order groups. There are specific, and y'all think about it, we have 10 campuses, if you will, right now. Some of those have federal funding. We have CTE, we have assistant superintendent for elementary, we have secondary, we have maintenance, band. We all have very specific departments. They have very specific people who are allowed to enter purchase requisitions and very specific people that are allowed to approve requisitions. For instance, Robin Straley cannot even see Mrs. Pardo's, any part of what she does. She wouldn't even have access. And I don't know if this is funny or not, but Dr. Sanchez does not have access to any PO groups except his to maintain he and Rosie's office and the Board of Trustees. For instance, when y'all travel, that's the only thing he approves. He doesn't have access to override and hop on maintenance and go approve things. he can't do it. And so we're pretty strict, but he is the authority over all the budgets and stuff. So I respectfully, I'm not saying that to be snarky, but I just want y'all to know he doesn't have the ability.
I have no authority, but that's okay.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be fun if you had to approve 40 groups a day? So anyway, so then I want to get to budgets, and that's an important component. And then again, in separation of duties, our financial compliance officer and our accountant are the only two, well, they're the ones responsible, but they're the only two that can enter account codes. They're the only two that can enter budgets, and they're the only two that can establish restrictions for these budgets and coding. And so even Doris doesn't do that. It falls on two other people. And so the separation of duties are even very strict when it comes to budgeting. Then we get into the process of user profiles. And the purchasing manager, which is me, or Doris, our CFO, we establish the global access. Things change, people resign, and then we have to put another person in, or a department could change and it has to be rerouted, or it adds an extra layer of an approval. But Doris and I are the ones that determine the purchase order, approval, access, and process, and we're the only two in the district that have access to do it. Then on the established approval paths, and this kind of may sound like a lot of words, but I want you to know this is very important. The auditors the last 2 years have really hit hard on this. They random draw travel, purchases, all sorts of things. And then you have to prove that the secretary for that department entered it, that principal or administrator approved it, and then Doris or I approved it. And so there shouldn't ever be a reason we have to override. We could possibly have to do that if somebody was out of the country on vacation, Dr. Richburg, or if sometimes it just happens. But we still make sure then the CFO, who's the authority over all funds, I make sure I get approval. I just don't override willy-nilly. I make sure there's an administrator between us because the auditors have deemed it's very important. They want to make sure the person who has a plan for that budget, that knows the campus improvement plan and knows the rules about it, is approving it. So it's one area that I'm really strict on. If even somebody asks me and I'm like, I'm sorry, I need your approval on it. I can't override. I know you're not here, but get on your phone and approve it. And electronic's great. We can do that now. And even Dr. Sanchez doesn't have the ability, y'all, to go in and override it. Next, we're going to get to authorized users. I've already spoke a little bit of that, but in the authorization or in the using with this, each campus has to attach proper documentation. Every purchase is unique. In this 40 PO groups, I went back to the office because I had to approve a PO for one of our administrators that they need for tomorrow. And I went ahead and looked, and to date, we have approved almost 3,000. It was 2,943 POs just this fiscal year that our office has processed. And so, but in that, we have to make sure if it's federal funding, if it's food service, if it's CTE state funding, there's special requirements. They have to have a justification form. We have to make sure they're not debarred with the federal government. If you're expending federal funds, you have to make sure that business is not debarred. And so we go to a specific place and we check it. It's cumbersome. It's a lot of paperwork, but we're trying to be compliant and we're trying to execute the plan of the Board of Trustees and our staff. And we're going to make sure we're purchasing it legally. And so that's what I do. I want to speak a little bit about bid and quote thresholds. We're different than private institutions and corporate offices. K through 12 and even universities have to follow bid and quote purchasing thresholds. We are fine till we get to 50,000 in a specific category or commodity, if you will. And once we hit 50,000, our board, well, actually, the state says you have to get it off of a bid. And then federals, their threshold is 250,000, which you can easily get to when you're buying, 700 Chromebooks. You might could get to that amount really quickly. But we make sure we dot the I's and cross the T's with requiring quotes. We want to make sure shipping is on there. You don't want to have a purchase, a $10,000 purchase order, and they forgot to add shipping, and all of a sudden it's $4,000 more because whatever they were delivering. So that's the thing we're looking for, and we're making sure they're following the bid. If it's free shipping, then, hey, why are you charging us shipping? And so we all kind of work together to make sure. And so really, we have set our quote threshold to 50,000. I'd send a bid director's letter every month saying, hey, if you're getting to a purchase of about 20,000 to 50, come talk to me and let's make sure we're doing it legally. And sometimes we can't move as fast as everyone wish we could, but there's board policy components. You'll see one tonight that requires, before we start advertising and doing this project, we have to have y'all's approval on how we're going to do it first. So I'm looking at board policy. I'm trying to just keep us all out. None of us look good in orange, so I'm trying to keep us out of jail. And so I try to communicate. Listen, have we had some purchases this year without a PO? Yes. They've been really good explanations and kind of silly. But we also have a very specific thing and process. If you do that, you know, you have to give me a written explanation, and I shame you and make you feel terrible, and because I want to scare you enough that you don't do it again, because I want our habit to be compliance, and that's what we're looking for. I take my job seriously. I represent my Savior. I represent my husband's name, and I represent this district, and I want to do that shining. I don't want to have any hickeys about it, so I'm really serious about my job. The last thing, it's just, we've approved the purchase order, okay? This fancy IOU, we make sure the vendor gets it, and then we make sure all the documentation is attached after we get it. We're pretty strict. Even our auditors gave me a really nice compliment, and he goes, man, y'all have documentation on every, yes, there was a quote, there was a packing slip, and there was an invoice. And that packing slip is proof that we got what we ordered, and we're not paying for things that we didn't. And since they had to do a lot of the audit electronically, he really appreciated that he could just go online and see everything he needed. We didn't have to go pull vouchers the first time in a long time. So it's cumbersome sometimes for our secretaries, and I apologize for that, but it nets us a good audit and it keeps us all safe. Just this, you can't really read it, and I have paper copies if y'all are just dying to see the flow chart. But basically, it's just, you're entering a requisition, your administrator's approving it. If it's not approved, it goes back down. We get the corrections made on it. If it needs to go to a federal grants manager or another special department for approval, we can reroute it for that. We make sure that they have the correct account codes. We make sure they have supporting documents. We make sure they're using an approved vendor. We make sure it's an allowable purchase. And then it goes to the vendor, and then guess what? When the stuff finally arrives, and listen, we've had some lengthy lead times on a few things. Some things come quickly, some things not. Sometimes there's issues with it. They come all beat up, right, Rodney, in a beat up box, and we have to return it. And so we don't issue payment for that. But then the accounts payable people talk with the campus secretary. Hey, you for sure got this. We got it. We have the invoice. Are we good to pay? And they pay it. And so that's really, in a nutshell, our procurement and our internal controls. Did I do that, Brent? Okay, thank you. Do y'all have any questions about internal controls or procurement? There's a lot more internal controls. How many pages is it, Doris? I mean, it's really long, but I just gave you the highlight for procurement. Do y'all have any questions?
Now, when people say, man, Becca's tough.
Yeah.
We got it. So I'm just curious, though, you said 2,954 POs. Compared to before we started all of the bond and
No,
trying
it's
to build.
about right.
I mean, are we on top?
Oh, yeah,
Is that
yeah.
way more?
Yeah,
or?
we'll be over 45 by the end. Yeah, and that's about what it always is.
I mean, are we way over because we do have
No.
so many projects, or that's
No, we're about right.
Okay.
Actually, we're really on target for what it's supposed to be. I know it seems like, but really, we're about right where we normally are. And then we actually cut off purchase orders April 30th. And so, grown principals, y'all heard it here first. So we'll cut it off because we want the stuff to get in to have time for our accounts payable department to close the fiscal year. Our auditors are like, why are y'all spending, we got to get it. It's for these year's students, and so we're getting it done. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dunlap.
Thank you.
All right. Another person who's been spending a lot of money is Dr. Richburg. And so we wanted to also give you an idea of where we've had the ability to purchase technology that for years we haven't been able to purchase. And again, this goes back to the silver lining of all of the challenges we faced with at-home instruction during the shutdown period. And so I'll turn it over to Dr. Richburg.
So I had 10 slides. I condensed it to 2. Ms. Straley said I could speak for her. We have until 8:39 to be done. Or we have to answer to her. If you don't know what that means, ask later, and if you're sleeping under a rock or something. So I've got 2 pages to summarize. This is nothing that you haven't seen already. We follow all the purchasing laws that Ms. Dunlap was talking about, and so nearly every purchase we've made since January of 20, when I summarized all this, has been over 50,000. So you've seen every single one of these at a board meeting of some sort. So I summarized them kind of in a way maybe to group them together so you kind of see where it was funded and what it's for. So I grouped a bunch of expenditures in infrastructure. And what I define as infrastructure, things that have a 10-year or longer life. That is things like in the new buildings, that is wire in the walls, that surveillance camera hanging on the walls, that's access control in the doors, things like that. 10 years or longer is how long we expect them to last. The biggest portion was bought, $1.2 million with bond. There's one item that really makes the local high. If you remember, it's been 5 months ago, we approved a private LTE. It's kind of been on the radar. It's a long lead time. We're about half done with it. We're still waiting on antennas and certain equipment for that. That's about $1 million of that $1.9 million local. But that was, again, using some of the money that was freed up by using the COVID relief, the ESSER, for what had been used in local. So that's the biggest part of that. So that's the stuff that doesn't have to be replaced very often. Some of it never. But the cameras we're replacing now, they've been in anywhere from 8 to 12 years. It's kind of how long the cameras have lasted. That's a big chunk of that bond money. The next group of equipment is what I've classified as classroom equipment. In the old days, that was overhead projectors. In the next to old days, that was projectors. In the newen days, as somebody told me they were called, as opposed to olden, the newen days. I figured you'd appreciate that, Tom. That's the interactive flat panels. So we bought a bunch of interactive flat panels. We're still getting those. We've got about 120 more that have yet to be delivered. We've already committed the money. That's about $1.5 million. That was done with federal funds. Again, during some of the COVID, some things just, it's weird how, they always said money doesn't just appear, but it seemed like money just appeared even though we're all paying for it in our taxes one of these days. But some of that was purchased with local funds. There's computers that went on back of the interactive flat panels to help them operate better. There's some certain labs in some of the schools that need to replace. That's what the local, those generally have a life of 7 years on a device like that. We actually have 7-year warranty on the interactive flat panel. So that's kind of that group. Now we get down to the student devices. Those basically have been purchased with a little $75,000 small amount. I can't remember what that purchase. I think it was laptops that we just purchased for early college, high school for next year. The rest of them have all been purchased with, I'll say, free money, either through the COVID relief funds, that's what the CRF stands for, or emergency connectivity fund, where we were reimbursed in full for most of those. So that's about $1.5 million worth of stuff. And finally, teacher devices really haven't been that much of the expenditure. We had actually started prior to January of 20 and bought laptops. We're in the process. We've got that all done. Next year, we'll be coming back probably for the next step in refurbishing, because the ones that were new will be old. And we'll kind of start that replenishment process. And so the student devices, teacher devices, that's what you end up having to replenish kind of on a regular schedule more than the other that were on the other page. But that's a total of about $7 million, more than we spent. My standard answer used to be, when he says, can we do this or can we do that? I would say all it takes is money. I quit saying that. Because now it takes time, because there's a lot of stuff going on. But all well needed and things that will last us a long time. Questions about that? I'm not going to be the cause of us getting out of here at 8:41.
My only question, now, I feel like I've asked this in a previous meeting, but district-wide, are we, every teacher, every staff member that needs a laptop, desktop, whatever they like, they have it? And then
So as a rule, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but every teacher, every administrative assistant that does computer work all has a laptop. There may be a few odds and ends, like in the libraries where we have a stationary piece. There's still labs, maybe in ISS where they don't move around. But by and large, I'll say 95% of everybody whose job requires them to use a computer has a laptop.
And they're all within 4
They're all
years?
within 4 years old. We had an initial batch of about 50 or 60, maybe 100 that we kind of piloted that are coming on 4 years old. The rest of them are newer than that.
And then student-wise, Chromebook or,
There's at least one for every, excuse me?
do we have iPads anymore?
We have iPads for the younger children and for teachers. Some teachers have a laptop and an iPad, just because it makes it easier to walk around the classroom and do certain things and not be pinned to your desk even with a laptop.
And that starts at second grade or third?
Second grade and down has, and kind of the thought process, and that's kind of generally what people do around, if you look across the country. State testing starts in third grade. While it can be done on iPads, it really doesn't work out very good. So by then, they've had keyboarding, and they're kind of moved into that realm of that's what's useful for them, if that makes sense.
Just one of the other things to bear in mind is with local funds, a lot of it is E-rate funded as well. So that's where we pay, in many cases, less than 50% of the overall cost. In some cases, we're paying 10, 15, 20%. And then through the E-rate funding, they pick up the rest of it.
Yeah, so an example of that is the wiring in the walls. They pick up 85%. Now, we have a big budget of about $500,000 over 5 years that we can use of E-rate money, but the wiring, they pick up 85% of that cost until we run out of budget. And they're really limited on what you can use it for. You can't use it for devices, so we've never been able to do that. They kind of are the behind-the-scenes stuff. So switches and wireless access points and wiring in the walls, things that everybody thinks that, oh, it's wireless, we don't need all that. It basically covers all of that stuff, making all that stuff work. All right, thank you very much.
All right. So at this point, you've had a look at the financial picture, financial profile, where we are. The financial health of the district is strong, and the reason, of course, as Ms. Dunlap pointed out, the separation of responsibilities. So now we get into, with all of these bond projects and schools about to open and the reconfiguration of an intermediate and a junior high, we have a lot of people. And where are those people going to go? And how have they been notified, or have they been notified? So we wanted to give you an update on that, because at this point today, we've notified everyone of where they're going to be, if they're a teacher, an administrator, a paraprofessional, or an office paraprofessional.
Thank you, Dr. Sanchez. And, change is hard, but change is necessary because it gets us to where we need to be so we could be considered progressive. So we knew in order to get our staff placed and do it well, so it looked right, it felt right, we had to make sure we were leading a successful transition. And we knew that we had to put that in the hands of the teaching and learning department, because they do have that big picture view of the district, which really allowed them to take a really holistic approach to how they placed our staff. So they're each going to come up here and tell you about their strategy, about how they went about doing that. And before they come up here, we'll start with Robin. I will tell you that their strategies were very person-centered. They were very interactive, and they really aligned the strengths of the teachers to create really, really good groups for each of our new campuses to really kind of, to facilitate some synergy on our new campuses. So they'll come up and they'll tell you about their process.
Good evening. So we'll start with talking about how we began the process and worked through talking with teachers. So back in November, we had a staff development day, and we provided some training for the staff in the morning, all of the district. And then halfway through the morning, the high school was released, and we kept all of the teachers in the district that were working with our students pre-K through 8th grade. Dr. Sanchez stood up. He discussed the vision for the future, kind of where the district was going, some things to be looking forward to. Following that, I was able to speak to the staff about what a 5-6 intermediate campus will look like. What are some of the ideas and strategies behind that type of a campus that we want to make it be a good learning environment for students of that age? And then we talked about the 7-8 campus, and what does that look like, and how is it a little bit different from our current junior high setup? Following that presentation, Yesenia stood up, and she talked specifically about the elementary campuses and what they're going to look like since they're changing pre-K to 4th grade instead of pre-K to 5th grade. So we wanted everybody to have a good understanding of the new formats, the new structures, At the end of the presentation, we shared a Google form with the staff, walked through it step by step. On that Google form, teachers were asked, what is your certification? What is your favorite grade level to teach? What is your favorite content to teach? We went as specific as your first choice, your second choice, and your third choice. Every teacher had the opportunity to fill out this survey. We value what our teachers appreciate and want in their classrooms. We value where they have passion, where their experiences have been, and what they're looking forward to. So we wanted to have that teacher voice and their input at every meeting we had. So the Google form was a great way to collect all of that information and have it available at our fingertips anytime we gathered together. We could pull it up and see. So once all of the data was gathered from all of the staff, we literally sat down with the Google Sheet, just like an Excel spreadsheet if you're a Microsoft person, and we put filters into the spreadsheet and said, what is everybody's first choice? And let's sort those out. Everybody who said, I want to work at a pre-K4 campus, we're going to put all those names in this sheet. If they said 5-6 is my first choice, they went to a separate sheet. 7-8, they went to a different sheet. And then we went through those sheets and we filtered to see how many teachers picked this campus or this grade level, how many teachers at this grade level teach each of the content areas. It was very strategic. If we found we had a gap, maybe we had a bunch of English teachers but not a whole lot of math teachers, we went back to the original sheet and said, okay, let's filter it by second choice. How many of these teachers may have picked math as a second choice that we could go back and relook at our groups to add and strengthen those areas where we were lacking? So we went through that process, filtered it, would go back and look. We kept track of how many teachers were getting each of their choices. We really tried to be intentional. We want teachers to feel good about where they're placed, but we also want to take care of our students. We also cross-referenced all of the requests with the HR department, with Ms. Merrick, with all of teacher certifications, because in Texas, we want to make sure our teachers are placed in their area of expertise, where they are certified by the state. So that was also a piece that we cross-referenced in our placement of teachers. Once we had a pretty good format for each of the campuses, we had good representation. We had all of the different departments come in, all of the different directors. We looked specifically at exceptional education, at language acquisition. We looked at our 504 students, our GT students. We wanted to make sure we had high-quality teachers in each grade, each content, so that we knew our student pops would be taken care of as well. So lots and lots of conversation, as much input and insight as we could get from experts in the different areas, as well as teacher voice was always at the top of our mind. Where do we want to be? Once we had everything settled, looked at it with the principals. Principals made any recommendations or tweaks if we had a couple of scenarios, this would work or this one would work. We talked through, let those principals have that input and that insight into what they knew about good cohesive teams and who would be good together. And then they went out and talked with teachers face to face and had those conversations of, hey, this was your first choice. We're so excited. We know you're going to be great here. Or some of the conversations may have been, we know this was your second choice, but you bring such an amazing skill set in this one area or with this student group of kids. We would really love for you to be part of this team to bring that strength to this team. If they were unable to meet with the teacher, they left a personal note, or maybe it was a phone call and a voicemail if the teacher was off campus that day, so that they could follow back up with them whenever they returned. So any questions about that part?
Would you say overall, coming out of COVID and the whole mask deal, and then kids are having, mental health, and there's so many issues on teachers, and I follow all sorts of blogs and different things. Teachers are frustrated, I know, not just here in our state, in our country. Overall, as a district here, how would you say that the morale is, and maybe better yet, is there anything else that as a district we can do to support them if when they're still struggling?
Right. Now, in terms of just in general, or in terms of kind of this new configuration? Do you specifically?
Well, start with the new configuration.
Okay.
Did that go pretty well? Did everybody kind of
You
fit
know,
into?
I visited with the principals, I know Yesenia did too, following the conversations, just to check in, how did it go? There were a few that were a little disappointed that they didn't get their first choice. But I think that face-to-face conversation and being able to actually talk through a little bit of the why behind it, I think was very helpful. As of this moment, I do not know of any teacher that has resigned or has said, I'm out the door. I didn't get what I want, I'm out. I have not had anyone come to me and express any kind of sentiment like that.
Okay.
I've actually had a lot of teachers through different planning days very excited because in the secondary, they've been on 2 different campuses. So to get together and share resources sometimes was a challenge. You could do it virtually, but I don't have that material in my hand. Or maybe Estacado had bought something that Coronado didn't, or vice versa. And so a teacher would say, oh, we've got this great lesson or this great lab. Oh, well, we don't have that. And so they've been very excited because they know this means we're pulling our resources. And you're going to get to all be in one PLC at the same time. And you're all going to have the same resources. So when you have a great lesson or a great activity, everybody has access to it. And we're not trying to get it across campus. So that part has been positive. I think it will also help. You know, when you have 2 grade levels on a campus, that's a little different feel than 3 grade levels on a campus. You can really get more specific. I have a lot of teachers that have talked about, oh, we've already got all these ideas for cross-curricular because we're only going to have the 2 grades. And so there's going to be more opportunity to do a little more cross-curricular between the contents. Looking at vertical alignment a little bit different. Just because of how we've been having to do it on 2 separate campuses, now we're all in one place and we can guarantee we're using the same vocabulary. We're using the same question stems or the same anchor charts. Or there's just so much great conversation that has really been sparking and sometimes hope. I think whenever you're tired and you're frustrated, you need a little hope or something to look forward to. And we're seeing some of that kind of bright light shine through, so I'm hopeful that maybe that is kind of helping to re-energize staff.
Right. Yeah, with so much just coming down from, you know, TA and the uncertainty, and I feel for them, and we all know that they play many different roles in the classroom. So that's one of the things that I think is a responsibility of our board. Of course, you know, students first, but is to really look at the well-being of our teachers and those that are in the trenches. So I trust that if there's things that we can do, I know the fall break has helped. There's been lots of things that have been implemented that seems to have helped.
Yes.
So hopefully principals and all of if there's things that we can do or change, because it's not easy here and it's not easy across the state right now. There's lots of controversy. I know from when we went to TASB, I wanted to scream and holler and pull my hair out. But hopefully they're starting to listen to teachers in the classrooms, hopefully.
Right. I agree with you. Okay, I'll let Yesenia speak to the rest of this.
Robin did a beautiful job of really explaining the process, and so I won't repeat that process, but I wrote down a few notes of some things that maybe I want to share with you. Is basically when we spoke to staff at that training that day, I talked about the transition and how we're merging from 6 campuses to 3 campuses, and that College Hill won't exist anymore, or Thunderbird won't exist anymore, and how, you know, Hillcrest, which is very dear to me as well, won't exist anymore, and that there is change coming. And if we're not changing, we're not growing. And I think the concerns for our staff and our teachers and our paraprofessionals, and even for us, is that when the future is unknown, then we worry because we don't know what's coming. And I think that's where they have concerns. And saying that, when we looked at the survey, we sat down, we brainstormed a way. I mean, we spent, the way she explained it was beautiful. She's very methodical and very aligned in how she does things. I love that about Robin. But there was so much that went into, and so much thought, and so much diving in deep to truly look at the surveys. For people who made comments that they're not even going to read the survey, why are we doing a survey? I can tell you that we spent hours reading every single little bit of that survey. And as we planned and looked at their certifications, at their years of experience, at their data, at how they worked with people, where we needed to place an anchor. We literally pulled up, and I wish you could see this survey and how it was imported, but there were several pieces to that survey, and then several other pieces that we had to completely align to make good decisions in placing people. The other thing that we took into consideration was this is somebody's livelihood. I mean, sometimes your identity is based on what you do for a living because you're so tied in, and especially teachers are so passionate about what they do, and paraprofessionals. But we took a lot of time to do that, and we may have, I know some people were anxious to know what their placement was, but we wanted to put them in the right seat. And we didn't take it lightly, I can tell you that. As teachers were moved up to the intermediate grades, those teachers were moved because on their survey, they wanted to go there. They indicated, and so Robin and Ms. Carter basically filtered those out and sent those names to me. We worked through that piece, and some of our strongest teachers went on to intermediate, but we wanted them to be in a place where they felt confident and also could use a good skill set so that when we do make that transition at 5th and 6th grade at the intermediate campus, that we have strong anchors there as well. The other thing that we did back in the fall is we looked at the projections for dyslexia. What are the numbers there? So that we can make a good decision there and place teachers at the intermediate level that could service the number of kids that would be serviced for the following year. So there's a lot of little details that we had to look at so that we could provide the support and the services that we needed for the special departments as well. Do y'all have any questions?
I had an opportunity. I walked in, I was looking for Yesenia one day, and I walked into her war room, and they had these with names all over the wall, and there was a group of them sitting in there as they were working through the choices in the teams and moving them around. It was a very comprehensive look, and both leaders and the directors that worked with them, they did take this extremely seriously because the principals and they, in the end, were going to sit down and have to have the conversation with the teacher. And it's so much easier when you take the time to be deliberate and you give them their first or second choice because you care and you take that time. And I'd asked both leaders the same question. How many teachers were really, really upset? Did we get any resignations? And they both said, we had people that didn't have their first choice but weren't upset when they understood the rationale. And at this point, no one has said, here's my resignation because I don't want to go to X campus, Y campus, or Z campus. So that was very reassuring, and again, a reflection of the diligence that they put into the work.
And I have to just commend the directors and the work that they've done because they're sitting here, and I will tell you, Brandy has put hours into helping with the process. Katrina has done the same thing. Mary Sanchez, who is like super detailed. Like I wish I could plug myself into Mary and so that I could mirror what she does because I'm so global. And she is like, Yesenia, look at this and this. And she helps me think through things that I can't even see sometimes. And for Katrina, I'm like, Katrina, I need you. You know, she's principal and she's director. And I'm like, okay, I need your help. I need you to help me brainstorm through this. So I'm so thankful for them and the team that I work with because without them, this wouldn't be possible. And I will tell you, board, it's a lot of work. We are doing things that it's amazing what we're doing, but it is so worth it. And I tell people as I meet with them, when y'all walk into those campuses and you see what, you know, those campuses are going to look like and how they're going to be around, it's going to be an amazing thing. We had the privilege today of meeting with paraprofessionals, and I was excited because I got to meet with them as well. Katrina went out, Brandy went out, Mary went out, I went out, and I sat down, and it's very time consuming, but to talk to them face to face and get their feedback on and see their faces and their reactions. Not everyone's thrilled with having to move because obviously some positions went away because of us merging campuses, but I'm so thankful that everyone gets to keep their job. And I know that I've been in meetings in TASBO and other meetings where if they're overstaffed, they let people go, including certified personnel. And that's one of the things that I know that you and Dr. Sanchez have held strong to is that we will not cut positions. We will keep people in place, and I thank you for that you are taking care of our community.
And paraprofessionals, most of them were pleased. One thing that we had talked about, and Dr. Sanchez mentioned this earlier in the week, there's going to be some help with some of that move process, because I know there's a lot of anxiety. Can you kind of touch on how that's going to look? He talked about maybe hiring some young high school kids or needing summer jobs, because there's a lot of anxiety. I've had teachers mention, how are we going to do all this and move, and,
I will tell you, Mrs. Bass, I lived that when we closed Lakeside. And they came in, and it was a very short time that they gave us, and they said the building needs to be, like, your classroom needs to be cleaned out. And you basically had to figure it out. So we have started having those conversations already in SLT and with principals. And I've said, okay, if you can start looking for boxes, just because our supplies have been low, not here, but worldwide, start looking for boxes. Ask them to start packing their personal items already. And the other systems that we're putting in place is, like Katrina's working on a inventory list that she has. Jeff is working on his inventory list, so he's gathering those things and making sure that he gathers those. We are working on a process. Did you say something, Jeff? Yes. Yes. So everyone, they're working on their inventory list and what we're moving, and then we're also thinking, sorry, he distracted me. I'm like, Dad, did you say something about it? No, just working on systems to make sure that we're gathering everything and moving it to where it needs to go. Mainly curriculum, they're packing their personal items, taking them. You'll hear about that in a minute. Charles will talk to you about that. But just creating some systems to where we are going to be ready to go, and hopefully get everything out that we need to where it needs to go. And you'll hear about that here.
So this time I'll ask Manuel to come up and to do an introduction on the process mapping and timelining of campuses and the sequence and order. And so he'll be joined by Charles and David as well, because this one will definitely be a team effort.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to kind of just touch base a little bit on our moving plan for the district this summer. It's a little overwhelming, but at the same time, that we still have to get this done, and we're actually, like Charles was telling us, there's a video that we're going to produce, and I think he used the word excited. I think David said, we're not really excited, we're getting there, but anyway, I'm going to be using referencing a lot of the older names of the campuses, just so that we know how we're going to make the moves. So we're going to first start with Hillcrest, move everyone from Hillcrest out, and because we've got to move La Mesa over also. So we've got to work on Hillcrest first, then College Hill, and I left out La Mesa there between College Hill and Hillcrest, so I apologize about that. I'm just catching that now. But next will be College Hill, Highland, because that's where we're going to have the Plainview Collegiate High School there. Edgemere will also be done. But while we're moving Hillcrest, College Hill, Highland, and Edgemere, we've also got to simultaneously move Coronado and Estacado, because we'll be moving those back and forth. Some teachers will be moving out, some teachers will be moving in. So we plan on hiring extra help. So that's something that Charles is going to speak with you all about here in a little bit. So that we're hoping to have two teams to be able to accomplish this. Also, while all this moving is going on, we've got libraries, nurses' stations, special ed that we've got to move, some furniture from La Mesa over to Hillcrest. I've got to get with Brandy and just finalize what we're going to move over there. I've already spoke with some of the nurses and kind of looked at some of the equipment that they have and seeing what maybe can be moved and salvaged, and maybe the better cots and moved into Coronado, or I'm not too sure exactly what that's going to look like yet, but we're still talking about that. SFE, food service and first student transportation. As far as that is concerned, we've already been talking about the reassignment of the personnel there. We've got some managers that are really looking at probably retiring at the end of this year. So I think we're going to be looking pretty good about making sure that since we're going from 6 to 3, we'll have them fully staffed and up and running for those moves. First student, they're pretty well off. They're really on the ball. Usually if I just kind of tell them what we're looking at, they already start working on that. And Lori Coates over there, she's pretty good about starting to look at what we need to do, and she already has a plan by the time I sit down with her, and so she's already got it all marked out, how those routes and what it's going to look like. So we're ready on that. One thing that I just kind of wanted to bring up is, while we're doing this move, we are going to ask for some grace, some patience with the administration and the teachers, because summer projects are still going on. We have to ensure that school is ready to open on the first day. So that means, custodial is going to be working. Maintenance, we're still going to be getting fields ready. All these things are, grass is still being cut. Electrical is still going to be needed, air conditioning, plumbing, and as y'all well know, we lost two of our employees just, within the spring break. So, we're short, and we're going to have to rehire for them sometime. So, hopefully, we're going to do the best that we can with the limited resources we got, but we'll be able to maybe hire some of the kids. We usually get some summer help from the coaches also. They're pretty good about volunteering to help us out in these things. So any questions that I can answer before I introduce Charles and David?
Good evening. Did you get mine? Okay. And as Manuel said, we're still going to be in doing our routine summer maintenance. And the first thing that I brought up was our carpet cleaning. We still have our carpets to be cleaned, along with in the transition of boxes and furniture being moved. So it's going to be a great effort on coordinating carpet cleaning. Right now I'm in the process of getting a current quote from our contractor that we used last year, because they locked in a 3-year bid. And so I was informed just yesterday that they are adding a surcharge for fuel. For some reason, cost of fuel went up. So Highland, the education complex, Estacado, athletic field house, press box, certain parts of the high school, and of course the band hall, Ash High School, and Hillcrest, and of course Service Center are all carpeted. And so as we transition over to polished concrete, it's cutting down on our carpet cleaning. And as I told Dr. Sanchez, some of this carpet is getting harder and harder to clean because it's over 10 years old. There's a lot of paint, there's a lot of ink, there's a lot of things in the carpet that don't come out. And so we try to make the effort to get all that out. So carpet cleaning is going to be a great effort on my part, and coordinating with Charles and Manuel, making sure that we are not stepping on each other, so to speak. Because like I say, we still have summer school going on, we have Safe Camp, we have all these activities going on, so it's going to take a coordination with those guys. And as of the next topic is the district pest control, because as we start packing and moving and shuffling stuff around, the cucarachos come out, and so that's what we don't want. We don't want we don't want cockroaches to hitch a ride and go to other campuses, along with mice and other pests within the district. So that's a necessity, of course, and so we have to, again, we have things going on within the district that we have to work around the kids and that sort of thing. So that also aspect must continue. And then, of course, we have more furniture that needs to be moved in and out of Plainview Collegiate High School. They can't use the small desk for some reason. I'm not sure why, but we're gonna be moving furniture out of there, and then, of course, moving furniture from the middle schools so that they can be accommodated. And then, of course, our routine, the cleaning, disinfecting furniture that we normally do every summer, scrubbing, re-waxing hard surface floors, things like that. And then, of course, our biggest challenge during the summer is, of course, employee vacation. So, like I say, our biggest challenge within the operations is going to be, of course, moving furniture to the north and central elementaries. And of course, with the help of Charles and Manuel, we're going to make sure that everything that we order, that we get everything that we ordered and make sure that it's assembled correctly and put together, and of course, make sure that it gets moved to the right location. Okay.
How much assembly are we gonna have to do? Didn't we buy
I was
some of
gonna say,
that
didn't-
stuff's assembled?
The majority of the furniture we purchased is assembled.
Oh, okay.
Really, the majority of what we would have to assemble, it's really gonna come down to those things. The flat panels, we have to take them off, and Dr. Richburg described, they have to take them out, put them in boxes, secure them, put them on the back of a trailer, and then deliver them, take them out. Then they take the stands, put them back on the stands, put the screws back in, and make sure that they're in the right classroom and that they plug in and the mini computer on the back still works. So that's the assembly part. But all the furniture comes in assembled. We just have to deliver it and make sure the right chairs are in the right rooms. Some of them have casters to make sure that all the casters are working, none of them are missing or broken. So they'll still have to do all of that kind of stuff just to double check and make sure that everything that we've ordered and or paid for shows up in the shape that we want it to.
I was thinking that the furniture was gonna come directly to the school that it was supposed to go to.
It will,
is.
it will, yes.
It is.
It will, and then they'll help us get it to the right classroom, is my understanding. They'll help us get it to the right classroom, help set it up. But the real neat thing about the furniture is the furniture can either be standalone or work together, and you can put it together in tables. There are different configurations, and so teachers will have the opportunity to go in and move the stuff around the way they want it.
How many trailers do we have to move some of those things?
That would be a Charles question, about 5. But we would also like to disinfect that furniture once it gets here, before it's actually used.
Oh.
So,
And then for the flat screens, that's the trailers you'll use for those flat screens?
We can do those on a flatbed, so we've got several different options. Sometimes theirs, sometimes I've got one that I use my own that's around and navigate.
He doesn't want the big, long, crazy ones. No.
It worked on 250 of them so far. And it's actually easier than taking them apart, putting them back together, and putting them together the first time, so.
Is 5 trailers enough?
We have access to others if we need them. I
yes.
mean, we do. We could easily get other trailers that we need.
I say, man, I got one at the farm, but have a license plate and the lights don't work.
Oh, no.
I think Anthony is pretty good about loaning us the band trailer if we need it, but, you know, that
He's
thing
getting
is,
a new one, so
Yeah.
we're about to claim the old one.
that thing almost, you need a CDL to drive that thing, or pull that thing.
Yeah. But we, the thing that we wanted to share to this point is everything keeps moving, everything keeps rolling, but that we're going to facilitate and assist teachers as they move their items. Charles has the big scary part of that, though.
Okay.
So we'll let,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, David. Had to bring up the cucarachas.
Good evening. So in our effort to help move everybody, one of the challenges that we face is if you've ever moved from your house to a new one, you always know that you accumulated a lot of extra stuff. And so you're end up needing to purge and get rid of stuff. And so we know the the teachers have little cubbies in their rooms, and they've been there for a while. So our plan is, we plan on putting one of the roll-off dumpsters, one of those big dumpsters that you see on the job sites, one at each campus. We plan on doing that a couple of weeks before school is out. That way teachers can start throwing away the stuff that's not necessary, the old stuff, and the things that aren't going to be transferred over to the new school. And like you said, we're planning on asking all the teachers that they box up and take all personal belongings home. And once they get all that stuff, then we ask them to load up any curriculum, any school-related property that they need to move over to the new campuses. And the way we have that planned out is we have boxes for to provide for all staff. So not just teachers, but nurses, the librarians, the office staff. And we have color-coded labels that we're putting on each box. So if you are going to North Elementary, you'll have a bright green label. Or if you're going to Central, you'll have a bright pink label. We don't have those colors determined yet, but there'll be a distinct color for each campus and have them write their name on that. That way, when we see that, we automatically know which campus it's going to, and they have their name, and if they know what room number they're going to, we'll ask them to have that on that label as well. And that's just going to help us move, because it's not as easy as, like we talked about, not everybody from Thunderbird's going into North, so we have to be able to see those and make sure that they're all going to the right place. And if we walk into a campus that's supposed to be green and we see a pink one, we know one's out of place and it needs to be transferred over to the proper school. With that, we, like we talked about, we have trailers, we have enclosed trailers, and we have an awesome staff that can move stuff. We did this back with La Mesa, or Lakeside, and Ash, and the guys can do this, but like Manuel was saying, we still have a lot of other stuff going on this summer. So that's kind of our plan on moving stuff and how we have that lined out. Y'all have any questions? Thank y'all.
Thank you. So we wanted to conclude the state of the district, where we are right now, with a little video, and so we'll go ahead and run that right now. We don't have any catchy music, though. I wanted some catchy music, but they told me we had to pay for it, so we just said, I'll forget the catchy music. So nothing's free on the internet anymore. So this is Central. And I don't know why Central looks so much bigger than North, but they're the same size. It's just weird, but they are the same size. When you see North, though, it's enormous, too. Now, this little feature right here is the second floor outdoor learning space that's tied to the makerspace.
Cool.
That's the above-ground storm shelter, and again, I mean, the lid on that thing is concrete. So it's 1 foot of concrete all the way around, and I believe the lid is 6 inches? 6 inches of concrete. this is north. So, I mean, you can see the massive footprint of this thing, because instead of it being pancaked on top of each other, it's laid out in one massive building. Those are some real neat features that draw natural light into the hallways.
Miss Wallace, you're gonna get your steps in.
And what's real neat about the hallways and the natural light, that gets natural light into those interior corridors that don't have external windows. Guy needs to get off his cell phone and back to work. There.
Fix this, say, I am working.
Oh yeah, he's calling. He's like, hey, drone around.
Is this the front?
This is the front right here. You can see the entryway right there. The blue has made a tremendous difference.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then this is the new drop-off in the front.
Did you backwards to get home?
That's where students will stand now as being picked up. This is the drop-off, one of the drop-off and pickups in the backside of the junior high. So this is a junior high look. Of course, this is where we went through and replaced the water line, sewer line, because it was all gonna be under a new driveway. So everything underneath there, we got rid of the old cement plumbing that was under there. And then we're gonna tear down those buildings and move them out. They're beyond usable. That's the new gym right there that you're looking at. And again, it's massive. It's an impressive building. That's the band hall. The birds are about to take out Ivan's drone. So that's the band hall right there. And it'll have state-of-the-art acoustics and everything in there. And then Carl mentioned we're very close to taking those, the portables out of the front. And that'll be a parking area right there. On tonight's agenda, you'll see the reconfiguration for the office area as well. And then we are gonna resod all of this here, because without a playground or a area for the middle school kids, they killed all the grass in the front. This is the new science wing right here, and you can see the internal courtyard right there. So there's no way to get in, into the center of the building. This is the baseball field. I believe they're gonna begin pouring the footings for the bleachers here soon. They're already constructing the dugouts. There's the little bulldog there. And again, bond interest help pay for this. This is a softball. It's currently in use. The girls love it. We'll come back and we're gonna replace the old lights with LEDs so they'll match the baseball field. And then I think Charles and I discussed taking a look at also LEDs at the football stadium. We'll also come back through and cover the grandstand area, so it'll match the baseball field. And then this is the soccer field. We always get questions because it says Bulldogs, and then the other side says Lady Bulldogs. So we're asked, we're gonna have a female football team, and we go, yeah, soccer team. So we'll begin soccer next year. So that'll be the soccer field, but it also doubles up as the band's marching field, because the band used to march over here where you see the old numbers and all, so they'll be able to